Scrotum piercings, pros, cons, advantages, disadvantages. Buy a piercer. Coming up in episode number 29. So stick around. Those that are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I'm the owner and operator of the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located here in Des Moines, Iowa. Inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So when I talk to you about these things, I'm talking to you at a level of expertise as someone who has done this piercing multiple times and helped people through the healing process. First thing I need to tell you is that if you're easily offended when people discuss the human anatomy, sexual piercings, genital piercings, this may not be the video for you. Also, if it's not age appropriate, I would ask you not to watch this and try to find something that is. The sole purpose of this video is to educate those that are considering getting this piercing done, or maybe their partner is, so that they can make an educated decision on whether or not they want to get this piercing done by a professional body piercer. That out of the way, let's go into what exactly a scrotum piercing is. Scrotum piercings are located anywhere on the scrotum. They're through that outer sac of tissue. There's basically two layers to a scrotum. There's an inner layer and an outer layer, and your body uses that to control the temperature of that's inside so that you are not sterile. Because if it's too hot, too cold, then your sperm would not be active. We pierce through that outer layer, kind of a superficial piercing. It can be done anywhere on the scrotum, as long as there's the anatomy for it, and it can be done comfortably. Generally, they're done dead center or completely off to the side. Generally, when I do mark them, I generally try to take into consideration how much movement or contact the area is going to have with clothing for comfort reasons. But this is a piercing that is pretty common, and it's an old piercing. It's one that's been around since for thousands of years. So let's get into the pros and the cons. We'll start out with the pros. The first one being is that this is not prone to interrupting sexual activity as much as other genital piercings. Where it's located usually doesn't interact that much with your partner. However, you still need to practice safe sex and due diligence on hygiene and etc. But it's not going to interrupt things as much as, say, a Prince Albert piercing would, or a frenum piercing, or didoids, or even foreskin. Number two, this piercing has a long history of healing out. In fact, this piercing has been done by tribal cultures for a long period of time, by indigenous tribes and etc. And it's not something that is flash in the pan, nobody's done it before, experimental. They tend to heal fairly quickly because of the amount of blood traffic that's in the area, usually healing out in about 3 months. Number three, this can be done pretty much anywhere on the scrotum. As I mentioned earlier, usually when we're marking them, we either try to position them in a way where they're not going to have a lot of contact with clothing, your legs, etc., or upper thighs or upper legs. Basically to eliminate the possibility of causing discomfort and kind of to isolate the piercing from strenuous activities. Number four, this piercing can be done in a number of groupings. Probably the most common is straight down the center, down to a gish piercing, which is located there at the base from a lorum all the way down. I've done a number of groupings that start out with frenum piercings and go all the way down to the gish. So, however, you can put them off to the side, you can put them dead center, whatever your imagination entails, and if you have the anatomy for it, this piercing can be done in groupings and a number of groupings. It all comes down to real estate, people. How much room you have. Number five, this is a piercing that if you don't want anybody to know that you have it, they do not need to know that you have it. Unless you're sexually active with the person or disrobe in front of them, or tell them, of course, there's absolutely no reason why anyone will need to know that you have this piercing. So if you work in a profession where you are not allowed to have body piercings and etc., this may be a good choice for you because it's easy to hide. Now let's get on to the cons, the disadvantages. Number one, this piercing really doesn't provide any type of sexual stimulation. It is more there for enhancement, to make the area look different. It really doesn't have any stimulation points to it. Some people say the lorum, which is kind of a scrotum piercing, it's kind of right there at the base where things meet, that they can be a little stimulating. But beyond that, as somebody who used to have 2 of them, they don't really do much for you. Number 2, cannot exchange bodily fluids on near around the piercing for a minimum of 6 months. That doesn't mean you can't have sex for 6 months. That just means you need to practice safe sex, even if you've had the partner for years. We're not really concerned about STDs. What we're concerned about is the exchange of bacteria and that getting into an open wound. Number 3, you are more acceptable to STDs even after this piercing heals. Once again, practice safe sex the way you're supposed to. Basically what the situation is that you have a hard metal object in soft tissue. So even if a piercing is well healed, there is always that possibility with the strenuous activity that's usually involved with intercourse that there might be a slight tear in the piercing, and then you have an exchange of a virus. So the next thing you know, you have an STD. Number 4, your piercing may not be accepted by your partner. Some people have issues with genital piercings in activity. There may be a situation where, for one reason or another, your partner doesn't like it, and they're going to ask you to remove the jewelry. Also, you may have to remove it for any type of medical procedure or anything that involves electricity, anesthesia, scans, etc. So you should take that into account and consider that. Number 5, can bleed off and on for anywhere up to about 5 days, during which time I'm going to suggest that you wear a pad or sanitary napkin to reduce not only the possibility of staining clothing, but also to add a little bit of cushioning and cut down the amount of moisture in the area when it's most susceptible to infection. Now, this is the last part's my consultation. What I would go through if you came into my studio and said, "Hey, DaVo, I'd like to get a scrotum piercing." First thing I'm going to tell you is that they heal out on average roughly about 2 to 3 months. I do suggest treating as a healing piercing for a minimum of 3 months, which is going to involve doing hot soaks or compresses of warm water and sea salt, or using a sterile saline spray on the area for roughly about 10 minutes and then rinsing afterwards. Also, cleaning at least once in a day with an antimicrobial or germicidal soap, preferably in the shower. Cross-contamination prevention, most of this is common sense stuff. Wash your hands before you handle it. Try to handle it by the ball or bead whenever possible. The only time you really need to have any contact with the piercing during the healing process is when you are doing the soaks or applying the saline solution in cleaning the piercing. Rest of the time, leave it alone. Also keep everybody else's germy little fingers away from it. As I mentioned earlier, no exchange of bodily fluids on near around the piercing for a minimum of 6 months. It means latex barriers. Make sure that you clean the piercing after intercourse would not be a bad idea, just with warm water and soap, just to be on the safe side. Sex, whenever you're comfortable. Be gentle at first if something hurts to do. Rest. Try something else. If you're using a type of lubricant, make sure that they are water-based. Make sure that they don't have any additives. Nothing like heating gels, spermicide, flavors, any of that stuff. Just plain old-fashioned water-based lubricant. Keep your environment clean. Clothing, bedding, towels, anything that may come in contact with the piercing during the healing process should be cleaned on a regular basis. Clothing-wise, I generally suggest boxer briefs or briefs initially. The jostling around can be uncomfortable, so at least for that first couple weeks, kind of keep things stationary and eliminate some of that sway and contact with other clothing that may cause discomfort. Do not submerge the piercing in bodies of water you can't control the quality of, which is pretty much everything but your own clean bathtub until the piercing is completely healed. That doesn't mean after 2 weeks you can go in. That means no swimming until it's healed, period. And finally, do not let pets sleep in the bed with you. Keep them away from it. Keep them away from your clean linen. Be safe. This piercing will bleed sometimes anywhere from 4 to 5 days, so it's a good idea to use some type of sanitary napkin or pad during that initial week or so. I know it's the second time I mentioned this. It is about not only cushioning the area, but cutting down the amount of possibility of staining, clothing, etc., embarrassing explanations, and also it cuts down the amount of moisture in the area, which cuts down the amount of bacteria, which reduces the chances of infection when it's at its most prone to it. Jewelry selection. This piercing is traditionally done with a ring. You can do them with curved or straight barbells. Personally, I think the ring is probably the easiest to heal out and the less traumatic than other types. I have done them with barbells in the past and had absolutely no issue. The ring, aesthetically, I think looks better in this particular piercing than other types of jewelry. Other than that, the only other thing I would say as far as risk and etc., this piercing, because it is kind of a surface-to-surface piercing, not technically a fully one or definite, but it does have that quality to it. However, it is very successful at healing, opposed to like a surface-to-surface piercing on the back of your wrist or the back of your neck. However, they are prone to migration and movement, especially if you're one of those people who wants everything dead straight. You may notice a little bit of shifting and moving during the healing process. Another thing is avoid activities that are strenuous or may impact the area. If you're involved in any type of activities like riding motorcycles or biking or jogging or horseback riding or something that the area is going to be in contact with other things, you should probably cut back on that until it feels comfortable again. The same thing goes for jogging and etc. Usually it doesn't affect it as much, but it may. As far as clothing, once again, loose-fitting clothing is best. Try to avoid anything that's tight to the area, anything that's stiff, like the seam of jeans where it's really, really thick and stiff. Stay away from that stuff too. I think that's about all I can tell you about scrotum piercings today. I hope you learned something. If I brought up a question or maybe I missed something or maybe you have a suggestion, please leave a comment. I usually answer them if I have time. If you haven't already, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We do post these on a weekly basis. I'm almost out of piercings, so we'll be moving on to other topics hopefully in the near future. And if you like to support us, check out our merch store. Lots of hats, t-shirts, aprons, cups, all kinds of stuff there. Also, like the video, of course. That is like applauding, and we like applause. Yeah, I'm just a ham at heart. Till next time, I hope all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, guys.